I know this is your class, but it's going to be fun to be here. I think I was flattered, honored when Professor Pellion asked me if I would come and talk to you a little bit about my experience and some things that you all might be able to learn from me. My name is Amy Ricks, and I am the Department Chief Administrative Officer for Material Science and Engineering, and presently, and for almost the past year, mechanical and aerospace as well. And if you can't hear me in the back, I'm going to try to stay over here because I'm still getting over the cold where I was lurking in the back on Tuesday with a mask, kind of like, hi. Now my phone's going to lock me out and I get no notes. This is how today's going to go. So I wanted to cover just a few things in the beginning from Duran's, Professor Pellion's lecture on Tuesday, just to kind of recap those really quickly. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit more about you. There's a little bit of me in there. I'll talk about me in a second, but I really wanted you all to learn about, if you haven't already, growth mindset, leadership paradigms, tools that I think you could actually benefit from in your current future work lives, labs, relationships, etc. So my goal for today is to make sure that we have something introspective. You won't get out of my way, but you won't work. Okay, this is fine. So I am from San Diego. I am married. I have 2 kids. You'll hear me say, like, dude, a lot. You guys, don't take offense to it. I can't help it. My mom is dude. This is dude. You stub your toe, it's dude. So I went to San Diego State University for my undergrad, and maybe plural. I started as I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna be pre-med, and I was a bio major. I hit OChem and went, no, I'm not. So I switched to a minor, and then I thought, okay, what am I going to do? So I went on to psych, because I liked neuropsych, and I thought, okay, well that's neat. I can get into this. I can apply my bio knowledge into neuropsych. And from that point, I thought, okay, well, maybe pre-something. So I'm going to be pre-law. I thought that was really intriguing, and somehow kind of fell into a family law category, and I interned for the Board of Supervisors in San Diego County, because what do? We intern for where we want to go, right? A lot of you know that, and are doing it this summer. Congratulations. And I will spare you the details, but I was allowed to sit in on a custody case that was still to this day really disturbing, and I went, I cannot do that. I don't want to do that. And I thought, okay, well then, I'm still going to do law. I'm going to do politics. Like, I'm going to fix the world, right? And I saw some things on the back end, even at the county level, where I was like, but that's wrong. So we can't do that. Oh, that's lobbying. That's called, oh, so you vote for them on that, even though you don't agree with that. Okay, no, I don't want to do that either. So from that point, I was like, okay, well, I'm not giving up those units, so what else do I want to do? And I added English, because I wrote a lot in psych. I'm a speed reader, and I can write like nobody's business. I like to joke that I was ChatGPT before ChatGPT when you asked them to rewrite something. So I added English, hated poetry, couldn't get behind it, I was kind of bored. Kudos to those English majors out there. I admire you. I could not handle it. But I also wouldn't give up those units. So I added comp lit. And I really enjoyed, I know I was 3. I really enjoyed being able to compare text, to think of something that people think of in more of a kind of a qualitative manner, and my brain was quantitative for some reason. So from that point, I finally finished. I don't know if I'll tell you when, but I finally finished, and I was trying to time myself because for those of you that know me, I can talk a lot. And I want to not do that. I want to get to the point. So you'll see me looking down a bit. Forgive me. And also I went and got my master's in higher education leadership during the pandemic because why not? And it was a lot of fun. And I think that's something that you all are doing, is studying what you want to do when you graduate. And for a lot of majors, that doesn't happen, especially in, let's say, higher education. If I did that in my 20s, I know I'm not 20 now, but if I did that in my 20s, I would be like, okay, well, yeah, who cares? That's someone I have to go meet with at some point, okay, fine. But I did it related to my role here, and I met with people that I would interface with here. I interviewed Dean Eggerstedt, right? And I was like, okay, what makes you tick as a leader? And I'm thinking, okay, I can use this and learn from this while I'm forging a relationship with my dean. And he was very gracious and lovely and answered all of my crazy questions. But industry-wise, I want to switch gears really quick. I started, has anyone shopped at IKEA? Yeah, so I started working at IKEA when I was in college. And I started on the sales floor, and I was very excited about where I was working because I'm always excited about where I'm working. If you're not and you can't find something happy about where you are, you should probably try and look at something else. But I always argue that there's something you can get from everywhere if you look for it, right? So I was recruited into recruiting and HR, which I loved it. I love working with people. And then I had a few other jobs that kind of landed me a little farther north of San Diego. And everything still led around people, HR, contracts, but always with a kind of underlying theme of helping people. I find tremendous value in that. I'm gonna get some water. Hang on a second. So life takes you, I always say, maybe not where you want to be, but where you need to be. And I found myself working in HR, again, HR contracts for a builder and for building industry, let's just, because there's a few of them in between. And for the first time, as the start of the market declined, I was laid off. I'd never been terminated, I'd never been laid off, like horrified, like, oh my gosh, right? So then or a group I had worked with, actually, I went to work with them. And that was still in the building industry. And then the company closed, and I went, okay, I need to get out of this industry. And that was around 2007, dating myself. Some of you may have heard the economic decline around that time, especially building industry, right? So my dad worked at UCSD and is a computer scientist, systems analyst. And I thought, well, what's around here? And this is around, if anyone knows where Temecula area is. And I went, well, UC Riverside's over there. Anyone from Riverside in here? UCR? Highlanders? No. Okay, that's okay. So anyway, I applied and I got the job. And I started in the Bournes College of Engineering at UC Riverside, January 1st, 2008. And that date is only important to those of you who might be applying for graduate school, because I worked as they called us secretaries and coordinators back in the day, but for those of you in the graduate program that know Desiree Rios, I was her. So graduate student affairs. And that's the first day you come back from break and start headfirst into admissions. So it's always like, I say it's like drinking water out of a fire hose, in a good way, and having to smile with your teeth missing, right? So I did various things at UC Riverside, and I want you to take something from this too. I did anything and everything that would help me understand what was going on from the people that worked around me. If someone went on leave, I was like, I'll do it. Oh, you guys don't have money for a stipend or you can't do it? That's fine, I'm gonna do it. And I did as much as humanly possible, which eventually led me to computer science and engineering, which of course is my love. I basically grew up with them, so I've got to give them a little shout out. And I helped build programs, which was really exciting. I helped start initiatives on campus, which was really exciting, because one of the things that you will find in the workplace and in general is that if you have an idea and you say, this would be great, and you're shouting from the rooftops that this is what we should do, they say, great, now go do it, right? So you have to be willing, I think, to give the time and the energy when you actually have these ideas and you're at work. And I consider that training, right? So I'm gonna get to workforce in a minute. Let's see if this will work or I can get to my next slide. Please hold. No, I don't want to reset. All right, well, let's keep going. Okay, so I want to talk, like I said, about what you all did on Tuesday. So just to touch base really quickly, remember Professor Pellion talked about P&L, right? And I'm focusing on these two also because I saw somewhere that you might have an assignment on it, so I thought you might benefit from me throwing some additional information out there. So the profit and loss statement is basically like the report card for your business, right? So revenue comes in, expenses go out, and what's left is profit. We know that sounds pretty basic, right? So one thing that I wanted you to know, I mean, of course, as engineers, when you're out in the workforce, when you're in internships, when you're starting your own business, yes, when you have your own business, you're gonna be very involved in this, you wanna see it, but your decisions will influence what happens on the P&L, right? If you wanna use a cheaper material, that could impact what profitability is, et cetera. Seems pretty basic. So think of this, profit and loss is also, excuse me, is also like basically just income and expenses. So accountants don't like it when I say that. They're like, it's profit and loss. I'm like, loss has such a negative connotation because then it also makes leaders not like, well, that's a loss. Well, it's an expense. It could be an investment, right? So in my brain, profit and loss equals income and expenses. And then EBITDA, does anybody remember what that is? Earnings, yeah? Yeah?
Interest, tax, debt.
Depreciation?
Depreciation, amortization.
Yes, yes, nice, yeah. So EBITDA, so if you remember, it sounds a little intimidating, but it basically tells you how your operation runs. And an easy way to think of this is like your income and then your core expenses. So think of your paycheck. You have your gross and then you have your net. And for those of you who don't know what that is, there's an easy way to think of that too. So if you get an offer letter that says you're going to make $1 million, your salary will be $1 million. You're not going to get $1 million. You're going to net catch with your net what your take home is. And ew, gross, I don't get $1 million. So there you go. So you have your gross, you have your net. That basically shows your earnings before your net. So if you kind of think about it that way, it might be a really easy way to remember. So the other piece that he touched on really quickly was that if it was low, it was bad, right? He said that it was like 2%. Of course, that's correct, but I wanted to touch on that again too. It could be that there's high operating costs, inefficient use of resources, but it could also mean that a company is reorging. It could be restructuring to kind of dip and come back up, let's say in year 2. And then, of course, if it's like in the 20%, then your company is doing very, very well. Your beta 20%, like that's fantastic, great, buy stock in it. I think you sell, like the company is great. So Any questions on those two really quick? Just a couple quick tips. Okay. So I'm going to talk about leadership, work leadership, and I want you all, this is the part where I want you to start thinking about yourselves now and in the future. So can someone tell me what you think one of the most important non-technical skills in the workplace is?
Communication.
What was it?
Communication.
Communication, yeah.
Empathy?
Empathy, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. Anyone else? So I'm going to say efficiency is also at the top of this list for me. Among those other things, those are really good ones. Has anyone heard of Franklin Covey's highly habit? This is why you should not give a talk when you're getting over a cold, I apologize. Habits of highly effective people. So you can read this, you can look it up, but I wanted to introduce you to, some of you at least, to this. It's very, very applicable. So habit one, so be proactive, and the good news is you're engineers, and engineers solve problems ahead of time, usually, right? Which is great. So this is saying take responsibility for your life, for your business, be accountable, and in addition to, okay, don't blame others, but you choose your response to things rather than allowing yourself to be driven by external influences. So this is a really good one. Beginning with the end in mind, that's of course just knowing your goals. Make choices that move you toward what you want in life and work for them. One of the things I was at UC Riverside was a graduate advisor staff, like I said, Desiree, right? And I used to talk to my students and say, okay, well, you're having trouble choosing your major. Well, start to where you want to be. Well, I don't know yet. Okay, but what do you like? Like, I'm always reaching here, and if anyone's been in my office, you'll see me go, okay, but you're here. What is that going to lead to? And then we work backwards, right? So that's the same thing, and most of you are doing all of that now to get you to your goals, but I wanted to bring it to the forefront. Putting first things first. It's just about prioritization. As leaders and work leaders, we need to make sure that we are prioritizing within high pressure environments frequently. So it's just, again, being mindful to prioritize. Habit 4, in thinking of a win-win. That just means that as a leader, as a team leader, as a human in the workforce and otherwise, you make sure that you are looking for an outcome where everybody wins. Just because you make a decision where someone wins doesn't mean that someone else has to lose. So that's my interpretation. 5, seeking first to understand, then be understood, is one of the most powerful ones for me, for a leader in general, I think. And I have a story, an anecdote that goes along with this. When I went through this training at UC Riverside, but basically you just listen before you talk. You try to understand others before fully forming a viewpoint or responding. So the story goes with this, that there was a subway. They said New York, but they said it was quiet, so I don't know if it was a New York subway, but there was a subway, and everyone is very quiet, they're reading, it's very peaceful, but it is quiet. And a gentleman gets on with 2 small kids, looks like the father, and he gets on, the kids are disruptive, they're unruly, they're wreaking havoc, right? And so everyone's getting really annoyed, the peace is disrupted. So this person leans over and says, look, can you please control your kids, right? And the dad looks up and goes, huh? Yeah, I'm so sorry, like, we just came from the hospital where my wife, their mother just died, and I think they're having trouble interpreting what to do, and I think so am I, but I'll talk to them, I'm sorry. So you don't ever know. If someone comes into me or I see someone, you never know what their story is. This to me is one of the most powerful things in business that you can take away. Have this in the back of your mind, because not everyone is going through what you are going through. Not everyone would do things the way that you do. So that's a very important one for me. And now we'll talk about a happier one. So synergize, right? So work as a team. Teams do better when people combine strengths and ideas. And then I'm guilty of not always minding 7 to sharpen the saw. That's their way of saying that you need to get sleep and take care of yourself. Be healthy. As I'm coughing, I'm like dying up here. She's nodding at me, yeah. So stay healthy, recharge regularly, you don't burn out. But my favorite one that falls under sharpen the saw is to keep learning. And that is very, very, very important. I like memes and fun things too, so you guys will see. Okay, so really quickly to touch on on higher education leadership. So that's my world, and some of you will go become faculty. I know there's a range of degrees in this room, which is really neat. So at the university, I think we're fundamentally people-centric. So what we do in our academic community, it should and it can involve everyone, but it certainly impacts everyone. So as managers that way, and I mean managers including faculty, whether they want to be or not, they are, and leaders, they definitely are. We're comprehensive managers. So we have to manage it all. We have fiscal management, we have people management, and we have to do all of this, and you'll find this out also if you go work for a national lab, within being compliant within policy, right? Lots of policies. As my faculty like to call red tape and the bureaucracy. So with that comes, I would say since the pandemic, we have our own leadership paradigms I'll talk about in a second, but there's also employee paradigm shifts. This would be your coworkers, yourself, your own employees, people that you're around. And they have redefined priorities to where we people are valuing more of a remote hybrid work environment. They're feeling that their jobs don't define them in a new and different way. We have a multi-generational workforce now, right? So we have boomers, we have my daughter just turned 13, and her friend was like, "Okay, boomer," and I went, ha. That is my mother. Like, no. So then we have Gen X. I know she's like. Then we have millennials. I'm an Xennial, so I'm like the day walk. I'm the Gen X that grew up with the internet. So then we have Gen Z, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And then Gen Alpha's coming up. So we have all of these generations within the workforce. So there's different philosophies, different paradigms there, right? So I'm saying this to just be mindful. If you haven't encountered them already, you definitely will in the workforce, and we have to manage with all of that. People are setting boundaries now in a way that they haven't set before. So they're not living to work, they're working to live. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, I've seen this, and this is some advice for when there's a stretch assignment, when there's an opportunity to grow. I've seen people and heard people say, okay, well, if I'm not going to get paid for that, I'm not going to do it. Are you sure? And I just gave advice to a staff member here in engineering a week or so ago, saying, look, I really want this, and I want to do this, but I won't get a stipend for it. I said, okay, but is doing that going to get you here? because I know it will. So you have to ask yourself, what is this worth to you? Like, we pay for classes and certifications, right? So don't be afraid, don't take on too much, use your best judgment, but take on what you can and ask to be able to take on what you can. So we've all felt this as leaders. We have to balance this as leaders, and we have our own paradigms as well. So I'm gonna give you guys a quiz. So let's talk about leadership for a second. By a second, I mean like several seconds. So the idea of leadership styles were first introduced by psychologist Kurt Lewin back in the 1930s, and now there are multiple. So I was going to define it, but it's a really long definition from my phone. So I'm just gonna say leadership paradigms basically mean it's a lens in how we view the world, how we manage the world, what we see as effective, how we foster engagement. So my philosophy, and I have this written in a few places, are that successful leaders aim to understand how their own personalities, culture, ethics, and identities influence how they view and apply leadership. Research supports that when there's a positive and proactive leader, the team will identify with and support a new agenda and purpose, which leads to improved relationships and processes. Makes sense, right? And leadership for me begins with a mindset and habits, right? So I'd like you all to, if this will come up then, there we go. Go ahead and scan that QR code, please. We are going to take a quiz. Should take a couple minutes. If it doesn't work, let me know.
It works.
So again, this is for you. There's about 5 questions. Scroll down to the middle of the page, click on Start Quiz, and I'd like you to answer the questions how you would behave in reality, not what you think you should do. And you will not have to share the response, it's for you. Okay, most of you should have an output by now. So I'm gonna delve in and continue. You will get slides and notes and whatever you want from me later. But I will share really quickly there's many quizzes like this, but this is the one that I've used frequently because it's actually, according to several of my colleagues, system-wide, fairly accurate, and it's very quick and free. So go UMass. I thought that I was a transformational leader. It sounds great. I'll go through them in a minute. And then it came up for me the first time I did it as transactional. I'm like, it's not a transactor. Like, how dare this quiz is wrong. So I looked into it a little bit more. This is a few years ago. And it turns out for me now, I'm now more transformational, servant leader type. But there's a lot of really, really good things in each. And so the top ones, I listed them up here. The most common that you'll find and that you want to find are going to be the transactional, democratic, transformational, and then there's autocratic and laissez-faire, and I'll get in a sec. So a transactional leader, so these leaders, they're good at guiding organizations through periods of significant change. I say transformational, transactional. They're very adaptive. In higher ed, these are our people that would be really good during COVID at crisis recovery, getting people through really, really tough times, right? So then as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's not too bad, right? They do really well at making sure that everyone's pulling their weight, and then giving a little pat on the back when they do. Democratic leaders focus on being inclusive and collaborative. They largely operate within a shared decision-making world, which is also great. We have shared governance in the UC, so that's highly applicable, especially for faculty. They involve engaging various stakeholders, faculty, staff, students, community members. So these leaders do really well in rallying the troops for new processes, new procedures, any new initiative, definitely change as well, developing strategic plans. Transformational leader, they focus on reaching outcomes by inspiring and motivating people. Like, you see why I wanted to be that one. I was like, no, that's me. They encourage innovation. They're focused on recognition and development and prioritize mentorship. And they really do well in higher ed by inspiring a shared vision and fostering innovation and adaptability. Now, we have, remember I said the other two, so there's autocratic, they have their place, and they also have their time. So this is a top-down decision-making approach. They just make decisions without input from others or much input from others. It doesn't work in higher ed in all scenarios, like I said, because of shared governance and just the way that we work and our sense of community, et cetera. But you have to sometimes apply autocratic leadership when you just have to make a decision and move on. So you have to be comfortable with that. And then the other is the laissez-faire, the French allow to do, and it's a hands-off approach with minimal direct guidance. And it turns out that most faculty actually fall under this category more often than not. I know, well, folks in the lab, I know you've kind of seen this, and these managers let the more experienced and self-driven people go ahead and run the show. They don't get too involved without interference, but that also allows people to grow and to develop and take ownership of things too. So it has its place. All right, let's see. So any comments on what you got? It's always fun to watch everyone's face when you read what you have, because we go through it. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like if we're less in leadership roles, I feel like, I don't know, because we don't come necessarily from the leadership roles, we come from the menteed, I guess. So I feel like then we might want the more, democratic or laissez-faire type, I feel like it's hard for anyone who hasn't had a leadership role to go autocratic or even like potentially transformational. So I feel like that makes sense to me.
No, I love that, and thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, see, I didn't have my timer, we're getting on time. I want to talk about being a work leader. Anyone been on a lab project where you had to be autocratic? Yeah, at some point, everyone in here, senior design, any assignment, managing up, we're going to talk about that. You will come at some point where these will affect you, these will influence you, these will be a part of you, and you will reflect this at some point in your life, sometimes in simultaneous situations. So, no, that's a good one, thank you. So, talking now about managing up, down, and everything in between. 1 second. So, as a manager, yeah, I'm putting out fires. I refer to myself sometimes teasingly as the cruise ship director or the air traffic controller, making sure everyone lands on a runway and on the right runway, it's lit, like the whole bit. Everyone's calm, they had a great trip, whatever it is. So, there's a certain level of this that goes back to what we were talking about earlier that you just said, and that is being a work leader, which is basically, if I said this 10 years ago, people would look at me like I was crazy, an influencer. That's it. So you can help, so anyone can be a supervisor. I didn't say a good supervisor, but a supervisor. You have a task, you give someone what they're supposed to do, they're supposed to do it, and then there are paths to address if they don't. But it's so much better to get the support from your people, from people around you, so that you can actually get things done in a way that isn't autocratic, that isn't just, this is the way I think it's gonna happen, so we're gonna do it, and that's all there is to it. So you have to be able to have a significant amount of influence. And I want to give you some tips on how to do that. So this is a key strategy that you can use. And you can think of little kids when you think of this, and this is the 5 whys. Basically, as a work leader, we encounter problems, we want to find the root of these problems, and there's a strategy in being able to do that in a very systematic way that is so simple. The short version is you ask why 5 times. So Taiichi Ono is the architect of the Toyota production system. He began using the 5 whys method as a way to uncover hidden root causes of a problem as well as the solution. So the goal, again, is to clarify the real problem. Now, we're not talking about lab problems. You could, right? But again, it goes back to what you need to do to get to where you want to be. And if I'm trying to help you figure out maybe not where you want to be, but where you need to be, I'm going to continue to ask why, maybe frame that in a different way. So Taiichi's is that you clearly state the problem, you repeatedly ask yourself or someone else why. The deeper you go, you get to the root cause. And so I have a real example here. And I remember I asked it 6 times. This was a very long time ago. But it's a little silly, so bear with me. Okay, so I'm always busy, but I don't feel productive with my time. Okay, why? Well, because I get distracted easily by email. Why? Well, I'm constantly tempted to check my email rather than work on important projects. Okay, why? Because I want to be very responsive. Why? Well, I don't want to miss important email and have urgent messages sitting around and unread. Okay, why? Well, because I don't want my manager or my colleagues to think that I'm not doing my job well. Okay, why am I worried that my manager or colleagues will think I'm not doing my job effectively? Because I have a hybrid schedule and I'm worried that this may be compromised if people feel like we are not performing effectively. So very different than the very beginning, right? So I have a little QR code there, so if you guys want a snapshot, you can. Slides will be out. But Michigan has a great template, so you can actually use that and apply it. It seems very simple, but that's why I said like little kids, right? Why? But why? But why? But then they get the answer. It might drive you crazy, but they get the answer. So I have a little saying, at least for myself, and it's you learn fast and you recover faster. Every great career has some hard falls. Everyone makes mistakes, right? And we hear that a lot, but it is really tough being, I would say, in like a position like mine, where a lot of people really count on you for the absolute. Like, you know everything. Why, thank you. I don't, but I can find out. And so leaders are not and should not be expected to be perfect, but they're expected, and I mean this in business as well, they're expected to be adaptable and flexible and take responsibility, right? So I think Professor Pelling covered responsibility, communication, and everything earlier. So I want to introduce the growth mindset. I'm going to read this from Harvard Business Review. I'm going to make it really short though. Individuals who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others have a growth mindset. So that means that you ask for, you accept and apply feedback. Something that you could ask is, what could I do better? Not what did I do wrong? So we're reframing that. That's always a go-to. It seems, again, very simple, but very effective. There's the growth mindset, again, versus perfectionism. So a growth mindset will say, I can get better with effort. And a perfectionist will say what? I wasn't good enough, right? And I'm sure that there are many people in this room who have felt that way at some point, but if you fail, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. So it just means that you're trying something hard, especially in a complex field like what you all are in. So that's the space where growth happens. It's in the hard stuff. It's in the mistakes. If you've ever heard from entrepreneurs, that's what they say is fail as many times as you possibly can. So that is general business. That's here, that's in your lab, that's in life. So I wanted to touch on that. Failure doesn't define you, how you respond does. Okay, so there's a lot to this. I'm not gonna go through and read everything, but there's some tips in here that's how you can develop a growth mindset. So I can send this all out to you later, but I want to reinforce that I think that you should think this of yourself too, as a student, as an employee, as someone who's trying to get to where they want to be in life, that the last piece where it says invest in staff development, training, and learning, companies and people with growth mindsets know that their employees, they're just people with still unrealized potential. So you do that for you do that for others, and we do that for our staff. So that's one important part from here. So I told you I like cheesy things, so there they are. One of the biggest missed opportunities in business is viewing others and including our own direct reports based on their transactions rather on their potential. So my point in here is talking about atypical pipelines. I came up into my position in a very atypical pipeline. And I let it happen. As things happened, I went, yeah, that sounds good, I'll try this, I'll try this. Most of my colleagues, they start as financial analysts or basic accountants. I started as an advisor. And then I had to learn what I thought was the hard stuff. And it's funny now, because if I talk to fiscal officers and I bring the human element of it, the HR, the advising, the strategic operations piece, I'm like, well, that's the hard stuff. Well, that's the easy, fun stuff. So it's all relative, right? So an atypical pipeline, I'm sure there's a lot of you in here who arrived here from what you would consider to be an atypical pipeline, and I'm not gonna pick on you, but I always have a plug to current and future leaders to let's say when you're hiring, it's easiest to say this position requires ABC, and this person has ABC, or almost AB, maybe C. But to look for someone that also would have the potential. And also think of yourself as that person, as you're applying for internships, as you're applying for jobs, as someone that has that potential. That's how I also operate in my business. I get people to where they need to be based on the potential that I see. Because if somebody said, oh, you know, Amy, oh, she can really like pivot the heck out of that spreadsheet. She should run the department. No, that doesn't happen. I mean, it shouldn't happen. There's many other reasons. And so I'm gonna touch on something because atypical pipelines can frequently lead to imposter syndrome. Can anyone tell me what imposter syndrome is? Yeah.
It's how I feel about it. It's, I think I don't deserve to be where I am kind of thing, where it's like, everyone else is better than me, what am I doing here? Like, that's kind of how I feel about it. Where it's like, how did I get this far? I'm not that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much for that and for sharing. Yes. Not yes, I'm confirming what you are saying. I'm saying you absolutely belong here, but yes, that's exactly what imposter syndrome is. Anyone else? You hit the nail right on the head. That was good. So why does it show up in high achieving STEM environments? Okay, well, because this is difficult. It's a complex field, and you're surrounded by people who really truly are brilliant. And that's okay. Everyone brings something to the table. So I wanted to bring this up. I don't know if it was covered yet in this class, but this is very important, especially in STEM. Everyone experiences it. And I'll tell you, I have 2 chairs right now, but I was talking to one of them. And I went, yeah, you know, Professor Appelli had asked me to give this lecture. He goes, what are you going to talk about? I said, well, leadership, and then we can think about themselves. And I actually have slides. And he's like, we should just talk about yourself. I'm like, why? He goes, oh, well, another chair came, so Professor Amoli. He goes, oh, Julian did it. And I go, he's a professor in a chair. And he goes, well, yeah, and Magnus did it. I go, he's our dean. Like, okay, come on now. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, that'll be fine. And that's just, I know several people in this room. It happens in so many different places that you wouldn't think that it does. And so my assertion, and you notice I say strategies to cope, there's no cure. I don't think there's a cure. But there's ways that you can actually overcome that. And I'm going to read this because I was going to forget it because I'm not a material scientist and I wanted to make this corny joke. So I have, you're not an imposter, you're learning in a complex field. Yeah, I said that. Then I wanted to say, no one starts out knowing how to interpret XRD data, right? Okay, but you see my point. If you are here, you obviously belong here. And you have to make your space at the table. And chances are the person sitting next to you is thinking the exact same thing. It's very common. And so the key is usually to normalize it. So if you're willing, show of hands, who in this room has experienced imposter syndrome at some point? Okay, take a look around. There's a lot, there's a few. And it's fine, and it's normal. I had a vice chancellor, she became the provost at Riverside. She's a chemistry professor, and she talked to us about imposter syndrome. And I was like, there's no way. She's the provost, she's insanely intelligent, like all these there's no way. And she's like, oh yeah. Every time I go to this type of environment, I'm thinking, oh, should I really be here? And hearing someone say that to you is just, wow, it's meaningful. So I wanted to bring that out, and of course, thank you for for sharing and for hearing that as well. So part of this and having that seat at the table is managing up. So many of you will not be managers as soon as you graduate. Some of you will be postdocs, you can be researchers, faculty, team leads, etc. You could be in a lab right now and have to do this. And I picked this happy little dog because that's usually what I look like at some meetings when someone says something and I go, I'm sorry, what? So there's some key strategies that go with managing up. So someone tell me what managing up means. I'm gonna pick someone if you don't volunteer. All right, you wanna tell me?
Like keeping track of things and making sure everything, like all your eggs are in line, making sure that everything's running smoothly. Kind of like a mom, I guess. Like make sure you go to school on time, make sure you get picked up, make sure you eat food, make sure you go to sleep, like just keeping track of something.
Oh, that's excellent, thank you. How many of you have parented your parents? So now what does managing up mean? Right? So think of it like that. So you're not there to manipulate. You're there to help guide someone to be able to do something that you know to either be right or good, or to also help you work best with them. So they're usually your superior. They're usually, so I have this up here because this is basically mine. So anywhere from directors, junior managers, supervisors, deans, like everyone, right? It's trying to, again, influence and help the people that do not report to you and that you frequently report to. So it could be multiple people, and I have that over in the corner. So it is also about building relationships. So it's based on trust, definitely respect. We go back to communications. My leadership in this school, they know that if they come to me or if I come to them, usually preemptively like, hey, this could be coming and I'm gonna need you, please, to do X, Y, Z. Or I'm gonna do this, and then if this happens, I need you to do this. And then if this happens, then, so there's multiple scenarios. So a lot of what happens in managing up for me, I call it pre-gaming. So we got our pre-game and our post-game. So you pre-game before meetings. Again, that's trust, right? Like you know that I'm gonna say something that's not just for my own benefit. In fact, it hardly ever is. And it's your modus operandi and your relationship with this person that's gonna help you be able to do that so that you both do a really good job. Excuse me. Okay. So, yes, I like Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I'll leave this here just for a quick second. We're getting close on time, so I'm going to gloss over some of this very quickly. But this touches on what I was just saying. You know, you're making your seat at the table. One of the most important things, and this is just, again, this isn't life. You can be a work leader, not necessarily a designated manager, is that you give your team, your people, a voice. Sometimes it is easier for you in business and in management, in your lab, in your class, clubs, anything, when you're speaking for someone else. Quite frequently, especially those with imposter syndrome, will be willing to fight for others more than they will be for themselves. So something to be mindful with. There's something I have in here called peopling. So I'm gonna give, she's not here, but a shout out to my friend Melissa Gomez at UC Riverside. The two of us came up as advisors and we're CAOs, and we don't call it management supervision. We're like, it's peopling. It's about people. So feel free to borrow, steal it. So it is about the peopling. Everything we do is about people, and it seems so basic, but if you keep that at the forefront, that is what drives 99.9% of what I do and how I do it. Okay, so this is just a quick slide to remind, again, that thinking about yourself, your own training, reach for things. If you think there's something out there that might make you better, I've used this slide before, so that's why it's up here, especially with the QR code. It just goes to Udemy, or however you say it. But there are free courses out there. Some of them are very, very inexpensive. Also, that some are completely free, some are short, and they're just like those micro learnings that you can actually get things from that are tremendously useful. Use them. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think, doesn't UCI have a Udemy, like,
I think through
like
DCE.
Yeah.
Oh, Desiree's here. Hi. She's nodding, yes, DCE, right? Yes. So actually, I should put that link on there so see. See, continual learning. Yes. Okay. So to recap, I want to go back to some of the foundations that you've had in this class, at least I think you've had. So in general, trust is key. Communication is key. I would say trust is bigger than just about anything. I also say the best kept secret is the one that you never tell. So keep that in the back of your mind. That builds trust, confidentiality, thinking ahead when you present an idea. For example, so Magnus, Dean Eggerstedt, or Dean, said I need 5 minutes of your time, maybe 4. Give me 5. Okay? So I saw him in his office and I said, okay, you have a problem, I have a solution. You ready? He's like, okay, yeah. So I did. I told him, I said, this is what it is, this is it. I got these people together, this is what we need, this is gonna be outcome, and it might be less than 5K. Okay, any questions? And he went, it was 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And I said, well, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. So now, if I ask my dean for 5 minutes in the future, what do you think he's gonna say?
Sure.
Yeah, or I'll give you 4 minutes and 30 seconds because that's how, he likes to mess with you. But being trustworthy, but also being willing to trust others. It's a hard one, it seems basic. But also being willing to adjust your own paradigms. So thank you for doing the quiz. Think about it. There's a way to adjust that. You're not locked into whatever it is that you have. We're never locked in, we're continual learners, right? So communicate as much as possible. I have the details here that you can actually look at, but keep in mind the 5 whys. Again, seems very, very basic. It's kind of fun, sometimes silly. And I say silly because I make it silly for myself. I do it frequently. And the other little silly tip I'll give you is when you write an email, you never write an angry email, right? You never write it immediately, ever, ever, ever. They used to say, okay, write it to yourself. No. The best thing to do is to write it in ChatGPT and say, I don't know how you are working here. I don't know how you get out of bed any morning. You should be fired tomorrow. You're an idiot. And then you see what it says by saying, write this more professionally. And then it comes back with something, of course, that's like, I'm sorry that we have a miscommunication, and I look forward to working with you and helping you explore avenues of both of our continued learning. Whatever it is. So that always makes me laugh. I mean, so something to that effect. Using the 5 whys, I do that too. So I'll go why. But it's so effective and it's so simple. When you get really overwhelmed, going back to the basics helps a lot. So I think that's it for me. Thanks. I apologize for getting over the colds and for my notes situation, but these are some of the research journals that I pull from that I found useful. So I can send everything out to everyone, but does anyone have any questions, comments? I know we have a little bit of time. If anyone, yeah, go ahead.
So on slide 4, when we were talking about the leadership paradigm, I know you had mentioned that there was that motivation to want to do more. But then I think there is an instance, like I myself have encountered this professionally, where I had done more and it was abused to the point where I was promised something and it was never given or taken away.
Mm.
How do we find that balance of, you know, doing more for our position so that we can progress forward in our careers without having that be abused in that space?
It's a really good question. Did everyone hear? So how do you draw the line, basically? Like how do you take those opportunities without getting abused for it? At some point you will be. I've had it happen to me. I know she's laughing. Yeah, everyone. So this is Viviana Stadala. She works in material science and engineering. I'm gonna out you because most people here, they're in material science, they know you. So I still look at it like a stretch assignment. And when your supervisor tells you to do something, you still have to do it. But that's where I think the communication and the trust comes in, right? Because I'll make it personal. I'll say, let's say someone gave something to me or like really was way outside of my purview that I wasn't comfortable doing, or I was like, okay, I just can't, I'm at my max. So hopefully that by that point, you can actually just talk about it. But if you can't, that's when you have to put yourself out there in a little bit more of a direct way and say, I really value this opportunity that you're giving me, and I know that it's good for the company or good for X, but here's the reasons why I won't be able to do this right now, perhaps at some point in the future, but if I do this, maybe I have to give up something else. Can you help me decide what that might be? Or I frequently will change the conversation to be towards that person that might be giving it to me, to have them be a part of the solution, and usually they'll take it off without retaliating, I would say, or saying, oh, well then in the future. But you always run the risk, you just do. And that is a part of business. And especially now, I don't know if it's just now, but I've seen it, I've experienced it, where things get tighter. And if you offer to do more, you will do more. So at some point you'll also have to stop volunteering. But it is a different dynamic if someone gives you something. Yeah. Oh, give it to so-and-so, they'll do it. Oh, give it to so-and-so, like, oh yeah, you could just give it to them. So there's that conversation and communication that needs to happen. But if you make it heartfelt, you make it personal, you don't ever do anything publicly. Don't tell Professor Pellington, but you might have noticed, so I do not have my MBA, as he said, but are you gonna correct a professor in front of the entire class? Get no. So I just said very casually, I have my master's in higher education. So, and that's a simple little thing and he would laugh, but take things offline, take them into a separate space, and always be gracious about it first. If you preface it with something like that, you get miles out of it. And also then asking them for help. So can you help me find a way that I can either balance this, or I can give something else up so I can do that? And they go, oh, usually. Yeah, that's a good question. It happens a lot. Like I said, it happens to me. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for your
Hi.
great talk. My question is, when you lead a team, how do you deal with the different opinions in the team members?
So my own take on that, so she was asking how you deal when you lead a team, how do you deal with different opinions? So I love them, but that's me. So remember we were talking about keeping an open mind, being receptive to feedback, give feedback. So it depends on what the dynamic is. Usually most successful CEOs will usually say that they speak last, right? They want to hear what everyone else says. So if you have a situation where you know you're going into, where there's gonna be contention, they're conflicting, or just even as they arise, you can stop it, say, you know what, actually, this is a really good point. Why don't we see what everyone thinks, and then open it up, but give everyone, like, why don't we just take 2 minutes? And I wanna hear from everyone really quickly. So then it's a little more tempered, it's invited, take notes. People wanna know and feel like they're being heard, what they say matters, it's being considered. And you might not go with them, but I also am very transparent. I will say, I don't know if we can do that, but I'm gonna look into it, and I will, and then I follow up. But I'll do it as a one-on-one too, depending on what it is. If it's something big, I might just reply to an entire group, and so that everyone can see what that person said mattered and not just mine. It's really fluid. But I will also, again, take things to a one-on-one. So if someone gets argumentative, I've had this actually with a professor. I will not say what department, but came at one of my staff hard. And I stopped him and I went, you know what? I really do admire your passion here. He went, what are you talking about? And I go, I know you've done this for so long. You're getting fired up because you really care, and that's actually a good thing. So can you tell me the part, go back really quick, because I just must have missed it. Can you tell me that one part again that meant that much to you? Well, I just derailed him, and that's exactly what I meant to do. And then we had a really good meeting after that. So it really depends on, a lot of things are so situational. But as a whole, if you're a leader, as you're a work leader, invite that in. You're only gonna get something better if you can get different sides. And there might be something that you didn't think of. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Following up on that, sorry, how do you keep your cool in a bit of a high pressure environment like that? Like, that's really good thinking on your feet, but how do you practice that?
It's practice. So I have had some of the gnarliest cases you can imagine as an advisor and in being in HR. I had at one point, so this is back in the building industry, I was recruiting and I was doing a mass recruiting for, you guys remember the little sign spinners? Yeah, so we were a marketing company working with the builder, and we recruited sign spinners. So we had a big center, and I had a lot of parents and 15-year-olds who were doing with work permits, and like, this is a great summer job. And then we got a call that there was a disgruntled ex-employee coming to shoot everyone. And I am not kidding. And I'm saying it very directly because I got a phone call and the police were on their way. So I had 30 seconds to clear about 100 people without inciting panic. So I take a lot on me and I'll make myself the blame. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I just had a family emergency. I don't usually lie. That day I lied like a rug. And I was like, I have to go immediately. And of course I knew that would appeal with parents. And the parents were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was like, you guys, everyone just leave your paperwork right here. I'm so sorry. I got everyone out of the building. And as we were driving away, they had the guy cuffed on the sidewalk a block from where we were. And then I got home and had my, you know, but you just, right. So I will say the other piece to that. If you can go into any performing arts, do it. I played in Wind Symphony at SDSU. I've played flute for many, many, many years. And I get very nervous. But I've been able to strangely control it until after. So I can get up there, I can do my solo, I can do everything that I need to. And then afterwards, I start sweating and I'm shaking, and my heart rate goes up, and I'm just like, oh my God. So that's exactly what usually happens in cases like that. It's just a delayed response. And now I just go into mom mode. Anyone that's a parent, you just know. That's it. We're in fix-it mode, we're gonna do this, okay, fine. And then later you're like, oh my God. So yeah, it's practice and it's just experience. There's you know, conflict resolution. I've been to a lot of different classes like that. Places where you wouldn't think that you would need it. Advising helps a lot. classes on working with and dealing with distressed or disruptive people. There's all those things. So when I say go back to like we said Udemy, and you mentioned about UCI, yes, and DCE, find things like that are non-technical. You don't think you're going to need them until you need them. Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Are we early? Are we on time? A little early. Okay. Thank you, everybody. It was really fun.